Good evening, one and all present here. This is Prithvi Bhatt from DSC JSSSTU. I, on behalf of the entire team, wholeheartedly welcome you all to the first of this kind, DSC Samvad, Episode 1, Behind the Scenes of Research, in cooperation with our media partner, Mysuru Memes. Now, I would like to brief you all about the series of events or the schedule for today's session. Basically, it's a 2-hour session. For the first 45 minutes, we'll have Raksha ma'am with us, and for the next 45 minutes, we'll have Gaurav sir with us. For the last 30 minutes, we have Q&A session. You can post your questions in the comment section. Either Raksha ma'am or Gaurav sir will be taking your questions and then answering them. The YouTube video, which is going live now, is a recorded one. For those of you who are not able to watch this video because of different circumstances, this video will be posted in our DSC JSSSTU YouTube channel, and you can watch it whenever you feel it's necessary. Now, moving further, I would like to give a brief overview of our club. So basically, what is DSC? Developer Students Clubs are university-based community groups for students interested in Google Developer Technologies. Students from all undergraduate or graduate platforms with an interest in growing as a developer are welcome. By joining DSC, students grow their knowledge in a peer-to-peer learning environment and build solutions for local business and their community. I hope all of you have a great learning experience here with us and take some key points from this session and implement it in your future endeavors. Over to you, Preeti.
Thank you, Prithvi. Hello, everyone. This is Preeti. Now, we're going to have Pushpalata ma'am with us. She is the faculty advisor of DSC JSSSTU. We welcome you, ma'am. It would be great if you could share a few words with us.
Thank you, Prithvi and Prithvi Bhatt.
Yeah.
This is an honor and privilege for me also to be with you people for today's very exciting workshop or a kind of a webinar from a great eminent speakers. So before that, I just want to give a brief introduction where Developer Students Club is an initiative by Google developers last year, basically to help students learn in an effective surrounding environment and encourage them to contribute to the societal aspects more precisely. We provide students with the right resources and encourage them, and by various means like conduction of workshops and webinars and competitions and some kind of skill programs, and encourage them to participate in various activities which we conduct. And we also request the industry people to come and address and give them the kind of right information for the students to upgrade their knowledge and skills. Being the head of computer science department and the faculty advisor of DSC JSSSTU, I would like to highlight the motto of the students basically here in this club, which is connect, learn, and grow. In the past 1 year, DSC has done a tremendous work with all the student, and the faculty involvement, and they're doing a justice to this motto with their activities, not just in the college, and also on the state and national level. Just a year growth, but people are involving in various ways. In fact, certain outreach programs are also done to help in a societal aspects, to promote societal aspects. This club does not focus only on conducting workshop, but has been successful in creating a community by bringing tech enthusiasts together. And they have conducted various events in the state-of-the-art domains like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and certain app development programs and web development. And it has given them lot of knowledge to come out with certain problem solutions. They also have contributed to the society with their activities and consulted it to the PDA students, which we have physically challenged students in our campus by conducting certain workshops to them and some kind of mentoring to them in the organizations like project reach outs and other things. The college and the department has always been and will always be supportive towards to the students by conducting all this for all the endeavors of the club. This particular series called DSC Samvad, which is unique of its kind, and they've started with considering certain important aspects during the global pandemic to stay connected and to learn something new. And this being a situation, and today we have a very interesting episode, like behind the scenes of research, which paves way to engineering students who are really keen in pursuing research in the world of technology, because without research, only academics will not grow. It's the research should be a part of an academics, because just the curriculum and the syllabus will not serve the purpose. And that is why we do encourage students even in the pre-final years to conduct certain projects and then ultimately come out with certain papers and very reputed journals. So in that connections, many students would have a lot of interest in pursuing research at further the undergraduation. And nowadays, it's becoming a mandate to publish paper in reputed journals too. And in this connection, I think this is an apt and an apt session, which will be conducted by our club, and to promote the research interest students, wherein we have two speakers, Gaurav Kole and Miss Raksha, great speakers for the event, and they would be concentrating on basically how exactly the research papers on modeling online social discourse, which is Raksha's interest. And the second speaker we have is Gaurav, who is a software engineer at Microsoft and also has tremendous expertise in research context. So I request and also an appeal to all the students who have registered, and take the suggestions, and it will be a guidance for you people to go further, and also just involve in the club activities, so that we can have certain these kind of events like research orientations for the students, and in certain eminent areas like machine learning, embedded systems, IoT, and deep learning. So we can have certain paper presentations, contests, and such skills can be, you can come out with certain problem and the solutions. So in this connection, I would now welcome the speakers, and also I appreciate and congratulate our the students for taking such a great interest in doing these activities apart from their regular academic courses. I welcome the two speakers, and also I once again wish you all the best for this event, for the great success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. That was really insightful. So, how many of you all feel research is the monotonous job of investigating data and penning it? I guess most of us have that perception about research. So, to enlighten us more about this topic and to prove us wrong, we have two guests with us today, Mr. Gaurav and Miss Raksha. First, we have Miss Raksha, who is a research scholar at IIIT Bangalore. She has completed a master's degree in web technology and is currently pursuing her PhD in web science. She is going to take us through her journey in research, and she will also educate us with her knowledge in web science. And after that, we'll be having Mr. Gaurav, who is an MTech graduate from IIIT Bangalore and is currently working as a software engineer in Microsoft. We welcome you, sir. He'll be giving us insights on how research helps us in college as an engineer, and later he'll be discussing why web science matters in the industry and how it has helped him in his workplace. Before getting started, we'll have a small interactive section. You will have to go to slido.com and enter the code presented on the screen. The code is 11649. You will see a question and you can put up whatever comes to your mind. You can answer to the question. The question is, what comes to your mind when you hear the word research? I repeat, what comes to your mind when you hear the word research? You all can start jotting down.
The event code is 11649.
Okay, we have a first answer. Commitment.
Wow, great.
Okay, commitment. Nice. Science. Okay. Tedious work. Yeah, tedious work. Old age. Oh my God. Yeah, old age. Okay. Discipline. Yeah, true. Yes. Doctorate.
Funds,
Fun.
doctorate,
Nice.
lots of study.
Mm, lots of study. Okay. Inventions. Yes.
Efforts,
Yes. What?
inventions, exploring. Nice, nice.
Nice. Nice answer. Money. Money. Nocturnal work. Finding something new. Okay.
Keep studying,
Okay, we have
compiling
a
info.
couple of answers now. So, without wasting much of your time, I would like to welcome Raksha ma'am on board and take us through her expedition. Raksha ma'am?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the warm welcome. I am excited to be here. And yeah, so let me first share my screen. Can you please confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So yeah, thanks for having me here. So today I'm going to be talking about my personal journey and what happens behind the scenes of research process. Me and Gaurav, hopefully we are going to give you a small glimpse of what happens behind research. So, so let me start. So this is my larger agenda for today. So I have divided my talk into two parts. In the first part, I am going to be talking about my journey of how I got into research and what I am doing right now. And in the second part, I will give a brief introduction of this exciting new research domain called web science. So before starting my journey, I would like to give a small disclaimer saying every researcher has their own experience and they have their own interpretation of research. And whatever I'm going to present today is going to be my experience and how I see research and how it has empowered me so far. So I would request all of you to take it with a pinch of salt and consider it my opinion and not the ultimate truth. Okay, so let's begin. So, uh, so I am glad you guys answered the questions on Slido. Most of it is what I would have expected about a researcher or scientist. So I am going to begin with what comes to our mind when you hear the name of a researcher or when you hear a scientist. What comes to your mind? The first thing that comes to your mind is probably there's a lot of confidence in that person and he is knowledgeable. He or she is expert in that domain, and there is a lot of math that is involved. Um, all of that, and then there's a lot of study and you have to study deeply, you have to go into depth, you have to know everything in the world, and things like that, right? What else comes to your mind? A lot of serious discussions, there's a lot of effort that goes in, lot of study to do, lot of papers to read, and then equations and things like that, right? And then of course it's a long time. It takes a long time to complete research, or it takes a long time to do a PhD, and things like that, right? So, so this is something that comes to anybody's mind when you hear research or when you hear about scientists. So today I am going to probably confirm that some of it is true, and hopefully, share my experience that some of it might not be true. So, yeah. So if you think if you're currently in this position of looking at a researcher like this, it is perfect. Don't worry. So I am going to start with my journey of research. I'm not going to go very back and talk about my childhood. I will start from where you are, probably first, second, and third year of my engineering. Now, don't ask me why I did my engineering. It was purely because everybody else was doing it, and somebody said there's a lot of scope if you do engineering and things like that. So I did not think much before going to engineering. So, and also I come from a family which is highly academically oriented. Many of my relatives are, academicians, and they have got their PhDs. My father is passionate about teaching. So I have always been interested in higher studies. So I did not think much before, deciding to go for an MTech. So I started preparing for my GATE, exams, and then I cleared them. I went into an MTech. So I did my MTech in web technology. And so that is when I started realizing that so many of the professors that we had during my MTech were from top universities around the world. And we used to observe them, we used to watch them teach us, and we used to watch them having discussions among them. And we used to see them discussing for hours together on something random. And we would feel like, do they know everything in this world? How can they passionately talk about things, random things, and talk for hours? So when they were actually talking about things, we got very inspired. We were, I at least I was very inspired to see them enjoying those discussions. They seem to know everything in this world. So that is when I started, inspired by research. I started thinking of probably I should go into research. So what I did was, in my final year of my MTech, we had a choice of either going to an internship or doing a thesis at the institute. So I thought, let me try what research has. Maybe I will get a glimpse of what might research be. So I started my thesis in my fourth sem of my MTech, and that is when I started understanding what goes on in research. Until then, I also have had the same views that you have had till now. It takes a lot of time, lot of effort, and all of that. And during that thesis time was when I realized that it need not be, a tedious, such a tedious process. So what we used to do was, because it was a short term, it was a 6 months project, not even 4 to 5 months project. We had a research problem given to us, and then we started working on it. But more than the actual problem that we were working on, we used to be very excited about the environment that is in the lab, and we used to be very excited to discuss things. And it used to be so everybody's research would be a open discussion, and everybody could have a say in everybody's research. So we used to have a lot of discussions. Mm, so probably, so I like, to give an example. One day we started talking about how to define a furniture, right? Something as integrated as in our lives, in day-to-day lives. We just started talking about what might be a furniture, and that discussion started, and it went on for 2.5 hours, if I remember. So what went in was, we started thinking of, how do you define a furniture? All this while we were in school, while we were in college, as students, we were told that this is the definition of something, or this is what is gravity is, and we had to reproduce that in the exams with exact same words, with exact same terminologies. And nobody had till then asked me, what do you think is the definition of something? And for the first time, somebody started asking us, how do you define something? What do you think is, gravity, or something like that? So that is when we started discussing of, let me take the same example. How do you define a furniture, right? Do you call it something that you sit on, something you have in your living room, or something that you eat on, or something that is made of wood? Might not be, right? Your furniture can be made of anything. Is it movable? No, kitchen furniture is not to be moved around. So is there something that you cook on? You don't know. So is it something that you work on? You don't know. So we started questioning about a lot of things. How do you define very simple things in our life like this? Now, interestingly, Wikipedia says furniture refers to something that is a movable object, which is intended to support various human activities such as sitting, eating, and sleeping. Now we know in our daily life we do much more with furniture than just sit, eat, and sleep. Right? It is used for cooking, office work, and so many other things. So, just as simple as a furniture could be so complex to define. That is when we started understanding so many definitions or so many things that we have learned so far in school and college. Somebody had to come up with that, right? It did not emerge out of something. Somebody had to come up with that definition. And how did that person start thinking about it? How did that person come up with that definition? So that is when we started to get a small peek of research, of what goes into research, right? If you want to define something, what do? It was a very thought provoking experience for me, that thesis part. So that is and that experience was really enriching, because first time somebody was asking me, what do you define a furniture? And that was really what do you think?
Hello, guys. We have a technical issue going on. She'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay, there she is.
Hello, ma'am. You are not audible, ma'am.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Now it's fine, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry for that. So I was just saying that once I finished my tech thesis, I decided that I wanted to go for a PhD, and then I started applying to multiple places, and then I got rejected in multiple places, and then I realized I need to write something called a research proposal to get into research. Research proposal is a document where you are expressing your interest of a research domain or a research problem, something that you are interested to work on. And so that is when I realized I cannot just randomly start going and applying for PhD. I have to write a research proposal. And then by the time I started working in a startup as well, and that gave me that was a huge learning experience for me, because that is where I learned to run a project from end to end, from the front end to the back end, to changing the algorithms in the process, all of that. So startup gave me a lot of confidence in how to conduct a project, sorry. So I definitely would suggest people, if you have a choice, definitely go for a startup, because there's a lot of learning to do. And I was never bothered about how much money I am getting, as long as I can sustain myself. I was more concerned about what I'm learning. So that startup experience gave me a lot of confidence into writing my research proposal. And what I did was I combined my MTech thesis, the thesis that I had worked on, which was on semantic web. And I started applying whatever I learned in my startup and the projects that I was working on. And I wrote a research proposal, and then I gave it to some of my friends, have had it reviewed by them. And then once my research proposal was ready, I started applying to multiple places again. And then I got into triple ITB for a PhD, and life has never been the same after that. It has definitely been a roller coaster ride, and not a single day is same as the previous day. It has been an exciting journey so far. Um, so let me give you a glimpse of, so with all of this, I started understanding what is research, right? So let me attempt to explain what is research to you. Um, so consider this as all possible knowledge in the world, everything that we know, everything that human beings know, no, not know, everything that is there in the universe, all possible knowledge in the world. If the circle contains all possible knowledge in the world, how much do you think human beings know? Right? Not much. Human beings are still exploring the world. And probably I would say the small pie which you see here, probably this represents all knowledge that human beings know till now, right? Research is something that that aims to expand this pie in this whole universe of so much of knowledge. And among the small knowledge that human beings know, research tries to expand it. And every researcher or every research institute or academics makes a small dent to this pie, right? They try to expand in their own way. And that is how we are, as a human race, we are here today from so many years of research, right? So basically, research is the process of expanding human knowledge, and it is a very creative process, and a systematic study. It is creative because you're creating something that is not there. Like for example, if an artist is painting, he or she has to be creative because he's creating something from nothing, right? You have to have creativity. And when I say creative, it is not something that people are born with. It is a skill that you can learn, um, right? And it has to be a systematic study. It cannot be randomly talking about, tomorrow I will show, I will take 2 leaves and say I have the vaccine for COVID. It is not like that. It has to be systematic. There are some set of practices that goes on, practices that are agreed upon. You have to follow those practices to come up with something new, some new knowledge that human beings can use. So it has to be a systematic study. So this systematic study is different in different domains. For example, in my domain, there can be quantitative research, or so there can be qualitative research. There are different research methodologies that different domain follows. And so research, as simple as that, right? Process of expanding human knowledge. So who can be a researcher? So practically anyone. So there is no restriction on who can be a researcher. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have a doctorate or anything. As long as you're curious and you have discipline, you can be a researcher. If tomorrow you're curious about how do you define a furniture is still an open question. If you are interested and curious about defining that, or more importantly, today everybody is talking about AI, right? Nobody has defined AI. There's no clear definition for AI. So if somebody is curious tomorrow, and if you want to explore, or if you want to define that, you are most welcome to do that, and a lot of people are waiting for a definition for AI. So as long as you're curious and disciplined, especially because there are no deadlines, there are no exams, nobody is asking you that for an internal, there is no external. How do you how do you work when there is no exam? There needs to be discipline. So as long as anybody is curious about a problem and there is discipline, anyone can be a researcher. um, if this is the case that anybody can become a researcher, why do we need institutes, right? Why do you need academic institutes? Why do you need supervisors and so many so such an ecosystem? Why do we need that? So for this, I want to go back to the research methodology part that I was talking about. um, Initially, when you want to become a researcher, you don't know what is the research methodology, right? You don't know what are the set of the practices that people follow. You don't know how to publish and things like that. That is when academic institutes or supervisors and research community is of great help. Your supervisor will tell you what or will guide you through the process of research methodology and guide you through the process of how to do research, right? And especially the research community, because it is easy to I'm not saying it is easy to come up with an idea, but once you get into a domain, it is quite easy to come up with new ideas. But somebody has to tell you if your ideas are good or if your ideas are bad, or if what is wrong with the idea, can you improve your idea. So all of that is from the research community. Your lab mates or your peers are the ones who are going to tell you, who are going to grind you on your idea, who are going to tell you this is, this idea is great, or this idea is wrong, or there is something wrong with this idea, and things like that. So the research community is a critical part in research. Even today, even this talk, I have probably spoken about this stuff for some 20th time, but still my lab mates are here and they're hearing this talk and they're here to support me, right? Tomorrow there will be a grinding for me of what went right and what went wrong. So that community is very critical for research. Um, so, if at all this is what is research is, what do researchers do, right? How does research happen? So, I want to explain this with a very simple example. Um, so, let's say I want to understand human being conversations around any topic that human beings do. Let's say, for example, the only positive thing that is happening in the world right now is IPL 2020, right? So everybody is excited about it. So I want to understand what are people talking about. IPL 2020. So I will probably go and look at. It is difficult for me to gather every possible discussion that goes on around this topic. So I will go and restrict myself to Twitter. So I will ask the question of what are the major discussions that are going on Twitter around this topic of IPL 2020, and this becomes a research question. It is a very simple research question. I have taken this for the sake of example. Um, and so this is what I want to explore, right? So what do I do first? So how do you start approaching or solving this problem? So what I do first is look at what is there already. It is very rare that you are the first one to think of that problem, right? There are researchers who are working in the same domain and they might have already thought of this question. So you look at what are people already doing about this. Let's say, for example, there is a research that already exists which looks at Twitter sentiment, right? Given a topic like IPL 2020, they automatically understand what is the sentiment of all the tweets. And let's say they've said for this topic of IPL 2020, there are around almost 70K tweets, and almost 50 of them are positive, and not 35% of them are negative, and 15% of them are neutral. So this is giving you much more insights about the topic IPL 2020 itself, right? If you don't have this, it is very difficult for a person or a human being to go and look at all the 70,000 tweets. It is humanly infeasible, right, to go through all the tweets and understand, oh, this many are positive, this many are negative, people are talking about this. So we want some solution which is automated. It is not possible for human beings to do that. So what is existing already is something like this. Twitter sentiment is something that is already existing. So what you do is you go deeper into looking at tweets, right? So some of the tweets might be positive, some of the tweets might be negative. Then you start looking at, if at all there are some tweets are positive, what are they talking about? Some tweets are negative, that is true, but what are they negative about, or what are they sad about? Or if they are positive, what are they talking about positively? What is the aspect of IPL that they are talking positively? Now that is something that nobody has looked at. Can we know which aspect of IPL is the most discussed aspect? Right, so this is something that researchers have not done already, and this is something that might be useful, right, for many things, for advertisers, for government, for IPL, for teams. There are so many use cases around this question. So if I want to answer this question, what I will first do is start experimenting. So I will not go deep into how to experiment, because that differs from domain to domain. In the domain of web science, we have set of practices and how we experiment. So that is depend very heavily dependent on the domain that you are working on. So if this is the question that you want to work on, you start experimenting from the knowledge that you already have, right? From the methods that you start experimenting. And there can be so while you are experimenting, some experiments can fail, some experiments can give you wonderful results. All of that is fine, right? All of that is wonderful, if you that is okay. So once you have some results, how do you know if the results are good? Right? You have to first compare it to something that is already there. You either compare it to the result that was here, right, tweet sentiment. You compare the result with that, or you ask human beings, you ask experts, that do you think this is a valid result? And you evaluate those results. And once you know that these results are good, and then you present it to your peers, and if your lab mates approve of your results, then you want to tell the whole world that I've got these results. I've got I have figured out how to know what aspect of IPL is more discussed. So what do I want to do? I want to write and publish. I want to convince the whole world that this is a new knowledge that I am creating, which is not there. And if I have to convince others, from other researchers from different universities, I have to write and I have to publish. So what will I do? I will write to some conferences or journals, and they have their own process, right? They get papers from all around the world, and they have their own set of practices of how do you accept a paper, how do you reject a paper. And this is where the research methodology comes into picture. It doesn't matter what results you are presenting, what methodology you are using is very important. If you are using the right methodology and you are getting wonderful results, it is great. If there is something wrong with your methodology, it's very difficult to publish. So you get a lot of rejections. Then they give you some comments of how you can improve, and then you work on it, and then you publish. So there's this whole cycle, right? Once you publish, and then you move on to a next idea, and you start working on that, and you start looking at what already exists in that problem, and that continues, right? That cycle continues. And that is why research takes a long time, because there is no end to it. right? You can continue as long as you want, as long as you're curious, you can continue. So um, so this is what we typically do. So this is how typically a researcher life cycle is. So I hope that made some sense to you. So I want to end my journey of so far. I want to sum it up with this. Like when people ask me what is research, it is very difficult to answer, right? Because if we already know what we are doing, then it would not be called research, right? If we are creating something new, then I don't know what it is. So it is. So I am ending with saying it is very difficult to define research, and I can just say that it is an exciting journey, and you have to explore it yourself to understand what goes on in research. And so this is a typical. This is a very popular PhD comic that we have. Um, on the x-axis you have the depth of knowledge, how much you know about something. On the y-axis you have what you know. So as you so when you're in your or when I was in my undergraduation or my engineering, I knew little bit about everything, right? Everything meaning in computer science I knew little bit about everything. Then I went into masters, did a masters in web technology. Then I got a little deeper knowledge into one particular part of computer science, which is web technology. And then I went into PhD. Now I know a lot about one particular subject, right? So it is not that researchers know everything, but it is expected that in the domain that they are working on, they got to know everything about that domain or about that research problem. So I hope I've made some sense. So I am now going into the second part, which is introduction to the domain of web science. So before that, so since those are relatively different topics, I want to pause here. If you have any doubts so far, if you want to clarify anything, you can ask me. So probably 4 to 5 minutes we can have a question Q&A session, and then I can continue with the second part of my talk.
If you have any doubts or any questions, please post it in the comment section so that ma'am will be able to address you guys.
Okay.
And I think you can continue, and we'll have the Q&A session in the last, maybe.
Okay. Okay. So okay, so I will continue with the second part. So till now, I have spoken about my personal journey, right? So from now, I am going to talk about this exciting research domain called web science, and like how did it come into being? How did it start? So before talking about web science, I want to be clear about the terminology of what I am not talking about internet. I am talking about the web, right? I hope all of you know the difference between internet and the web. Internet is the global public network of millions and millions of computers and other devices. Whereas the web is the network of all the information that is on this network. It is web needs internet for its existence, and internet has been there from 1960s, but web is very recent. It was developed in 1989. So anything that any social media that you see, Facebook, Google, or Maps, or Instagram, all of that is web. Right, so I hope you're clear with the difference of what is internet and what is web. I am going to be talking about the web. um, since its invention, since its innovation, um, okay. So the web has revolutionized many areas of our life. For example, connectivity, education, politics, travel, entertainment, and many of aspects of our life. Right. So some of these are some of the examples. By 2018, half of the world was online. They had access to the web, right. And now, especially because of the pandemic, there are I am sure you have faced this problem of everybody is having an online class, right? So we don't know how that is turning out. So we have been forced into using the social media and using online classes and things like that. And I remember when we were kids, we were dreaming of becoming a pilot or an astronaut. But now, if you ask kids, they want to become YouTubers or social media stars, right? So that is something the web has revolutionized around us. But not all of it is good, right? There are huge negative impacts of the web. For example, there are a lot of misinformation that goes on. There are a lot of rumors that goes on, mob lynching, and people have lost their lives because of that. um, and then again, there are false information that goes around, which causes huge which has a huge impact on the government, on the society, etc. And it has impacts on industries like poultry industry, because of a rumor that goes around, or it has impact on companies and things like that. So it is clear, it is very clear to us that it is web is not something that has to be left alone, it or left on its own. We need to do something about it. We need to make sure that web is a positive platform, which creates a positive impact on human beings. So, as researchers, if we want to create a positive impact from something, what we do is we first start to understand it. So we have not yet understood what is the web, right? We have to start by understanding what is the web. So, for this journey of understanding the web, I want to begin by how it started. So, I hope you know who this is. So, this is Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web. And so everything started with Tim Berners-Lee in 1989. So, when he was in CERN laboratory in Switzerland, he wrote a proposal called information management, which was basically for himself or and his teammates to manage the information which was on their computers. So he called it mesh. He called it information management system, and he submitted it to his boss, who replied, "If you see this picture, this was the proposal that Tim Berners-Lee wrote, and on the top you can see his boss replying saying vague but exciting." So that is how all of it started. And then, with an approval from his boss, Tim Berners-Lee started working on this proposal of information mess, and he started building the first website, and he started developing tools for a website called HTML, HTTP, and URL. I'm not going to explain what are these technologies. We can just say these are the tools that are required for building a website. And within 1 year, by end of 1990, the first website called World Wide Web was built. And on the left, the image that you see is the first website that was built. Um, and in the next year he made it public. So this website was so until then it was available only for the users of that institute. But Tim Berners-Lee made it public for others from different universities to use it. And then he proposed this whole idea of information management system in a conference called ACM Hypertext. And then, understanding the potential that this can have, Tim Berners-Lee left CERN and he joined MIT to work on this project called WWW, which is the World Wide Web, right? So he went to MIT. And then in 1993, there was a milestone decision that was taken which changed the course of the web. The decision was that CERN and Tim Berners-Lee decided that the World Wide Web will be available on a royalty-free basis to anybody. So this is a huge decision, right? This was a product that he developed, and once it is royalty free, that means that anybody can use it. So this is a huge decision that Tim Berners-Lee made, and that is why it got so much of traction, and a lot of people, there were a lot of adopters of the web. And by October 1993, there were over 500 web servers that were online, and most of the web servers were in the educational institutions. Right, so that is when the first graphical browser called Mosaic was built. And so this, on the image on the right, is the first browser that was there. And as you can see, it was not a multimedia browser, right? It is only text browser. So in 1994, there was a commercial version of this browser, and that called Netscape Navigator, and that was available for public. So by this time, Tim Berners-Lee realized that we cannot just let World Wide Web grow on its own. We need to have, although it is royalty free and anybody can use it, we need to have some standards for it. So that is when he along with his colleagues at MIT, they established what is called the World Wide Web Consortium, and the this World Wide Web Consortium is the one who looks after what are the standards for the web. And initially, they came up with 5 design principles for the web to grow. And the first design principle was that web will be decentralized. Nobody will control what should happen on the web, or nobody can, not one single person can say that this is the content that has to go on the web. And then the second principle was non-discrimination. Everybody who wants to get onto the web should have a opportunity to get onto the web, and it should be a bottom-up design. Right? If you are building a website, the code is yours. The participatory approach. And universality. Any website that you build on should be agnostic to any computer platform or even hardware. So that was one design principle, and the last design principle was consensus. So these design principles can themselves be dictatory, right? They themselves have to come from consensus. So even today, if you go to World Wide Web Consortium, there are multiple discussions that are happening which come up with new open standards. Anybody can actually register to World Wide Web Consortium and provide their opinion into what should be the standard for the web. So that is how the World Wide Web Consortium started. So by then, a lot of companies and a lot of universities started using the World Wide Web, and few students by 1996, few students at Stanford University launched a browser called Yahoo, and that was the first search engine that came up. And probably you can, it is a very different situation than now. If you imagine the world without Google, and there are some website, you have to remember the URL of that website, and only if you know the URL, you can go to that website, right? In an era like that, there comes a search engine where you can put up something and anything you want shows up. Even if you don't know the URL, even if you don't know if that website exists, you can just start searching, and that website is available to you, right? So that search engine was available for the first time in 1995, and by the side, traditional dial-up systems were started to provide internet access, and that internet access became a household thing by then. And many households started having computers and started using internet. And by that time, some of the companies realized the potential of this web, and then they started coming up with their own websites, and they looked at the web as one more business option for them. So until now, it was largely the academic institutions that used the web, and by this time, most of the companies started using the web, and they started having their own websites. And by 1995, some of the companies, web commerce companies like eBay and Amazon were formed. And then from the year 1999 to 2002 was a great shift for the web, because that is when the dot-com bust and boom happened. Boom and bust, the most infamous boom and bust happened. So from in between 1999 and 2000 was the boom, where everybody started, any company that was existing at that point started having a website, putting up their products online, and get large or get lost was the mantra. And in 1998, Page and Brin founded Google, and at that time nobody was interested in Google, and then slowly it got traction. And then first versions of Amazon and eBay became huge at that point. From so until, as I said, until now, mostly the academic institutions used these websites. So they were not bothered much about the security. They were, they were pretty open about what they want to, they want to showcase the research and things like that. But when the shift came to e-commerce, the shift happened from openness to secure transactions, and that was a huge shift. And India was actually one among the first countries to actually formulate a regulatory framework for use of information technology. And this is, you can still go and look up the Indian IT Act 2000. And from 2001 to 2002 came the great bust, right? There was a global recession, and all the interest rates rose, and venture capital stopped, and the 9/11 attack added to all of this bust. And by end of 2002, in just a span of 4 years, most of the dot-com companies went bankrupt, and especially telecom companies, because they had invested a lot in having the telecommunication uh, across the world. So they went bankrupt by this time, and there were, and just like how you hear today, lot of programmers were being laid off, and unemployed programmers even then were going back to school to become accountants or lawyers and things like that, right? That's something that you see even today. And very few companies actually sustained this bust, and Google, Amazon, and eBay were few companies which actually sustained this whole boom and bust. And Yahoo unfortunately had to completely shut down all the acquired companies because of the huge losses they made. Um, so, so this is when everybody was expecting that this is the end of the web, right? This is we have seen the low, we have hit the bottom, and there is no future for the web. And that is when web reinvents itself as a participatory social medium. That is when the era of MySpace and Facebook started, and the crowdsourced platforms like Wikipedia gained popularity. On the web, you didn't have to create content. The companies didn't have to create the content. They just have to provide a platform for the users to create content, right? So the focus went from the companies to the users, and it became a user-centric perspective. And this new idea of sharing and exchanging user-generated content, became instantly famous. And PayPal employees started YouTube in 2005, which was later acquired by Google and things like that, right? So as you can expect, when there is user generated content, at the same time, when people started using it positively, there were some people who started using it for which had a negative impact on the society, like the cyber crime increased, and then internet censorship increased, all of that. And in 2006, the microblogging platform like Twitter were born. So by this time, yeah, so by this time, which was in 2007, there was a very important, very critical announcement from Apple that they are launching smartphones. So until now, internet was something that is on computers, and people had to explicitly go and log into the web and look at what is happening. By the advent of iPhones and smartphones, eventually leading to Android devices, web became a part of our everyday life, right? We are never separate from the web. Every minute we are giving, or we are part of the web all the time. So that was a huge transition. So from then, web has reinvented itself as Web 3.0, which is also called as semantic web sometimes. And it has been trying to become the intelligent web. Nobody has confirmed yet that it has become that intelligent, but it has, the World Wide Web definitely has been more connected than ever, right? So this is a brief introduction or a history of the web so far. So given all of this, who is driving the development of the web? There is no one single person, or there is no one single company or organization who decides, next Twitter should do this, or next the Facebook should do this. There's no single company like this, right? Web has today become a nervous system of our planet, and nobody expected that the journey would be like this. And web is now deeply embedded in our shaping of today's social world, especially in a pandemic where everybody is going online. um, so that is when Tim Berners-Lee and other researchers, others at World Wide Web Consortium said that enough is enough. We cannot let web grow on its own like this. We need to we need to have we need to start understanding what is the web, and we need to make sure that web is the web has a positive impact on the world, and we need to make sure that web makes this world a better place to live in, right? So that is when in 2006 Tim Berners-Lee and others proposed a new discipline called web science. So web science is basically an interdisciplinary domain. That means that research methodologies that I was talking about can come from multiple domains. So the basic focus or the basic goal of web science is to study the World Wide Web. So as simple as that. We just want to study the World Wide Web. Doesn't matter which aspect of the World Wide Web that you are studying. So web science hopes to change the world for better, and so includes engineering and not just analysis, right? It aims to develop new methodologies, for gathering evidence and finding ways to anticipate how human behavior will affect the development of the web. Basically, what I was talking about research, right? You want to create new knowledge, you want to create, understand, you want to make sure the web has positive impacts on the human race. So that is the larger aim or goal of the web science. So to realize this, again, Tim Berners-Lee and other researchers at World Wide Web Consortium came up with what is called the Web Science Trust. Again, we will go back to the same decentralization nature of the web, right? There is no one person who controls, what should happen on the web. So that's why they came up. They started an independent body which is called Web Science Trust, again in 2006, and this promotes the web science across the globe. And this created a network of laboratory web science. It's called WST Net, and this combines some of the world's leading academic research institutes today. Currently, there are 21 institutions so far around the world which are part of the Web Science Trust, with Web Science Network. And if you can see here, there are 2 institutions in India which are part of the Web Science Trust, and the one is IIIT Bangalore, the other is IIT Madras. Right? So that is when the new concept of web observatories came in. So just like physical observatories, right? There is one in Bangalore as well, which looks at the sky, which observes the different aspects of skies. And there is a network of physical observatories which observe different parts of the sky. Just like that, there are web observatories which observe the web and which observe different aspects of the web. And the Web Science Trust sponsors this global network of web observatories. And each web observatory has its own focus area. For example, at IIITB, we have the first web observatory in India, which we call Cogno. And the focus for us is to look at impacts of the World Wide Web on social cognition of the society, on look at impacts of the web on the thinking process of the society. So that is our focus. So we aim to, the Cogno Web Observatory at IIITB aims to understand the macro impacts of the web on social cognition of the society, build multiple tools and multiple, analyze different aspects of social cognition. How does, especially the social media, how does social media affect our thinking process today? And we are coming from a background of data science and network science. As I said, web science is an interdisciplinary area. There can be researchers from multiple domains, and we also host what we call web science for development every year. This year as well, we had, in February we typically have a web science for development workshop, and all of you are welcome to attend that. And here is a picture of some of the research lab members of our team, and yeah, so that is a glimpse of what is web science. So I want to end this whole journey of web science with this small infographic. So in the 90s, we had this cartoon, and so it kind of defined what was web at that point, right? There are two dogs, and one is on the internet, one is using the internet, and it is saying on the internet, nobody knows I am a dog. And at that point, web was like that, right? Nobody knows who you are, and you can do whatever you want on the web. In 2000s or today, the web has become like this. It used to be that nobody on the internet knew me, knew that I was a dog, but now, because of the big data, everybody knows I am a 15-year-old labradoodle who secretly likes cat food, right? Sometimes web even, some of the technologies even tells you what to think also. So that is the state of the web right now. So I want to leave you with this question. Uh, Next time you use the web, think of this. Are you using the web, or the web is using you for its growth? So I want to leave you all with this question. These are some of the references that I had. And thank you. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer. This is my mail ID. You are welcome to write to me if you have any queries. And then, yeah, so this is over to you, Preeti or Prithvi. This is a Slido.
Yeah, so we have another question regarding Raksha ma'am's presentation now. So after the talk, what do you feel, guys? After listening to the talk, what comes to your mind when you hear the word research? I want all of you to go to slido.com again with the same event code, that is 11649. So you can just type now. How have your perception about research changed? It's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah.
That is glad to do.
Research.
Is that what you do, ma'am? Eat, research, and repeat?
Interesting question. So we have this. So my supervisor says this, that research is not a career, right? Research is a lifestyle. Now that I know a particular research methodology, it is very difficult to come out of that methodology. So it doesn't matter what I am doing, even if I'm preparing for a talk like this, I use the same methodology, right? So it becomes a lifestyle. So you are never out of that lifestyle. So yeah, pretty much I can say eat, research, and repeat. Yes.
Okay, some people are in Big Bang Theory. Sheldon. Okay.
Okay.
Innovative and exciting. Nice.
Fashion.
So,
Steel info. Steel info. Okay.
Okay. So that is great. I hope there was some shift in what you thought research was and what you think research is now.
definitely,
I
definitely.
hope.
So,
Yeah.
okay, we'll move further now. So, what is
Yeah. Sure.
research but a blind date with knowledge? Raksha ma'am completely proved it wrong today. No, it's not at all a blind date. It's so much fun and so much interesting. Ma'am, you just completely turned our usual Saturday to a valuable one, ma'am. It was,
I very glad to
it
hear
was,
that.
yeah, it was indeed great learning for all of us, ma'am. Today we were introduced to a brand new topic, and it was a bliss to hear it from you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thanks
Uh,
for this opportunity.
yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll be
Also,
here. You can continue with the session. If there are any question, I can take it further as well.
yeah, I'm sure, ma'am. So also, if any of the viewers have any questions, so please post it in the comment section. We'll be taking at the last, in the last 30 minutes. So further, we'll move ahead now. We have Gaurav sir with us. So he's extremely excited to, share his thoughts with us. He's a coding enthusiast, a proficient web developer, and he loves to learn and enjoy implementing technology supported solutions. His interest lies in exploring how the web influences technology and society. Over to you, Gaurav sir.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Prithvi. I
Yes,
hope
sir.
I'm audible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure. It's audible, sir.
All right. Um, so yeah, again, thanks to Raksha for that brilliant presentation. Uh, I sadly won't take much of your time. I have a relatively shorter presentation, and so I'll begin. Okay. All right. Is my presentation audible? Oh wow. Is this visible? Is anybody able to see my screen? Okay,
yes, sir.
apparently not. Okay, I think I'll be better off with this. Yep. Ooh. All right. What I want to talk about today is again why research matters for a software engineer. So I'll call this behind the scenes of research, but for a software engineer. And why did this I did research to become a better engineer. I'm Gaurav Kule. So a bit about me. This is me in Barcelona, standing on top of the one of the highest places you can be in Barcelona, shivering. I was drenched at that day, and I had just come out of a conference, and I was excited, elated. This was my first research conference, and yeah, these are some of the things you do when you do research. So a bit about me. I'm a BTech and MTech from Triple IT Bangalore. I completed my master's thesis at the Web Science Lab, where I worked with Professor Srinath Srinivasa as well alongside Mr. Raksha here. Um, Currently, I'm a software engineer at Microsoft. I'm an open source supporter. I write a bunch of open source softwares. If you use Vue, you will get to know about that. And I make terrible presentations. Apologies for that. Um, so I'll tell you why I took upon research. So I was when I joined college in Triple ITV, I had this course. I took on this course in my third semester. It was called Network Science for the Web. This is by Professor Srinath Srinivasa. And this course, again, was a overview of pretty much what Raksha ma'am here covered in her presentation about web science. It was briefly the history of how the web came into being, and then it talked about how the web currently influences us everywhere, where it, being the obsessive nature that of FOMO that we have. Every minute we have to check our phones and our laptops for notifications from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and how these platforms have been designed in such a way that these nature and this belief has been ingrained in us that we need to look into these kind of behaviors. So with this course, web really fascinated me, and it has always fascinated me to an extent that I call myself some of a sort of a web history freak. Incidentally, if you can name any web service that has existed in the past 15 years, I'll be able to tell you that either I have been one of the top first 1,000 users of that service or been a part of its beta or alpha launch. I had an email when my first email was back in 2001. So my work, how do I say this? My incidents with the web is a very long time, and I've always been interested. And when I came across this course, network science for web, it just went to a different level. And I realized that I wanted to do something interesting as part of this. So at the end of my fourth semester, I reached out to Professor Srinath with a notion that I want to work with you on a project, and we started working on how we can help make things free on the internet. How do we promote and sort of piracy, but without it being actually piracy? So our research at that point, it was more about a web portal than a research. Was can we build a place like YouTube or ResearchGate or something like Facebook where people can transact in virtual currency that can then be used to trade items such as books, papers, videos of any sort. And over time, that ended up becoming uh, a web portal for researchers because at research, at least, people believe that research should be free. Knowledge is free, and that's why research of any kind, papers, books, all of that should be freely accessible to everyone. And that was the notion behind what I was doing back then. And over time, it took the shape uh, of my master's thesis, which was how do we categorize influence in a small setting, in a small group of people? How do we give it a number? How do I give a number on how much I trust or I have belief on, say, Prithvi here or Raksha ma'am here or Preeti here, and how much of trust and belief they have on me, even though we know each other for only a short while now. So for this, I worked with Professor Srinath for close to 2 years, and the end of that we published a paper and that had some good response. So so this was briefly why I took on research, is because the whole concept fascinated me and I wanted to dive deeper. And when I did dive in, what I did enjoyed, I enjoyed myself. So here I would like to ask you a question. As a software engineer in the industry, name one work activity that you will spend most of your time on. And Prithvi, can you take on the Slido thing here?
Yeah, sure, sir. I request all of you to again go to slido.com with the same event code, that is 11649. And then you have the question here. The question is, as a software engineer in the industry, name one work activity that you will spend most of your time on.
Planning,
Planning.
coding.
Okay.
Debugging,
Now that's a good one. Debugging, that's a good one.
meeting,
Nice.
having a
Good
Definitely,
coffee,
solution to
coffee is a
problems.
big part of the day.
Stack
Stack Overflow.
Overflow.
Stack Overflow, crying. Oh my
Brilliant.
god, crying.
Oh my God.
Okay, 9 to 5.
9 to 5. Yeah. Good luck with that. Finding good problems to solve. That is a good one. Designing, engineering. Define engineering.
Meetings.
So
Pizza. Oh my god.
what is that? Pizza.
Yeah.
Waiting
Waiting
for
for
weekend.
weekends.
Yes.
All
Definitely
right.
not.
Alright. If that's what you think, okay. Stack Overflow, coding, and weekends. That's what I'm seeing. Yeah, eat, sleep, code, repeat. That's pretty much my life here. Um, but I'll tell you actually how this works is most of the time that you spend while working goes in reading. You read you read a ton of stuff from including existing code, documentation for that code, and if you're building out new code piece, something new, what kind of technologies you should take on, what is the research, again, research behind why you should take on that technology, why is applicable to your problem, and what's the problem that you have, and is there research behind that problem and how to solve that. So this was one of the few places where my research experience of 2 years helped me a lot, both during my time at the university and even after that. So it taught me how to ask questions, and it taught me to ask questions, even things as simple or even as mundane as something like, what does liking a post on Instagram mean? You saw an Instagram post, you liked it. What does that even mean? Do you like the post? Do you like the person who posted that picture? And sure, after you people here would relate to that, liking, trying to stalk your crushes on Instagram, and then inadvertently you end up liking one of their posts, and they get to know that someone has been stalking them. Believe me, I know, I've been there. Pretty much every one of us has done that, and we want to avoid that. So why what some of these questions, like, why do we even do that? Why do we think like that? This ability, or this this notion of you should ask questions, even though how stupid they might sound, got ingrained to me because of research. During our presentations, during my time with professor at the lab, we would have meetings as long as 2 hours, 3 hours, and every statement that I made was with a question that, okay, you have made this assumption. Why is that? What's the reasoning behind that? And I would do the same. And that helped me when I would do my projects for other courses. It helped me when I was interviewing for the jobs, because the interviewer would pose me with a problem. And at every point, whenever I made even an assumption, I would stop myself and get that clarified. That why am I making that assumption? And in most cases, that would really help in solving that problem. My research time gave me a brilliant mentor, Professor Srinath. He's an absolute gem of a guy, and I owe a lot of my abilities and the way I think to him. And there's a quote from him that I often hear from him. It's a quote by Professor Albert Einstein. It says, "Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school." And Professor Srinath actually imbibes that it's not what you learn at the institute or at school. It's about the skills that you pick up while learning that. And it's those skills that I learned while doing my research. I don't even remember what I wrote for the research paper that got me a prize, but I do remember how I did it. And the skills that I learned during that helped me a lot in my workplace. Also, this my paper, the project that I was doing under professor was one of the most interesting topics during my job interviews, and most of the interviewers would actually spend more than half of the time talking about what I did, how I did, and that helped me a lot during the interviews because they would give me lesser questions to solve, and they'll ask me more questions about this project, and it would impress them impressively. So again, if you do research, you take on interesting projects with professors. It gives you a point to stand out amongst other people who are interviewing for that same position, and that keeps the interest of the interviewer peaked, and that really helps you. And yeah, it taught me how to read. Now, so all of us does a lot of reading, and reading reference, you think you know how to read, and we all read. Why would we typically read? We'll read to pass our exams, to maybe complete a project or do something of that sort. But when it comes to research or even work in the industry for that matter, the amount of reading that is useful to you is often very small. So you read a lot. You, if I have a problem to solve, say I have to come up with a algorithm to sort 10,000 numbers in a manner, and so these numbers keep on popping up and I have to continuously sort them. So I'll read documentation of how other people have done it. I'll read Stack Overflow. I'll read research papers of how they've been done. And 90% of the papers that I read or the documentation that I read would be useless to me. So again, and at this point, the time is of very essence, because if I need to get this job done in a short period of time, I have to meet a deadline. And with that point, I have to read quickly. I have to skim read. So during the time I did research, I would read hundreds and hundreds of papers, of which maybe two or three of them would be useful for my use case. So I would read back then is read the introduction and then read the conclusion and see if that helps my my cause, whatever I'm looking for. If yes, then I'll go ahead and read the paper entirely. Otherwise, I'll just skip it. So very important to know how to read, because you'll spend roughly 50% of your work time reading. You'll read documentation, you read existing code, and trust me, it's not a pretty sight when you have to debug someone else's code. But it's even worse when you have to debug and read your own code, which you have written 6 months ago, because by that time you would have forgotten everything that you ever thought. So it's very important at that time to be able to give something a quick glance and understand what's going on, and that happens and that helps when you read a lot, and that's something that research taught me at least. It taught me discipline. During the 2 years that I worked, there were not hard deadlines of sorts. We would have a weekly meeting where I would report what I have been doing for the past week, and that's very similar to how things happen in the industry as well. You typically have deadlines for items, but it's people are not behind you. People won't push you that okay, you have to get this done, you have to get this done, you have to get this done. You are expected to do things on your own and expected to meet deadlines, and it's hard. It's hard to keep up to that pace when you don't have someone pushing you, and when you do independent research, you learn that much earlier than when you get into the industry. So working on this paper, working with Professor Srinath really helped me in that aspect. And the good parts, conferences, travel. Um, so these when you publish a paper or when you are part of a research lab, you will inadvertently be asked to attend some conferences or workshops where you'll be asked to show off whatever you're working on. And most of the time these and you get to travel with the professor or sometimes alone, and these are the times when you get to travel on the university's money, or you might get external sponsors, and well, it's a free vacation. I had a lot of fun. I went to Madrid and Barcelona and Portugal during my last paper. This year I wasn't able to because again, COVID. So yeah, you travel new worlds. And yeah, since you're working on something as deep as Raksha ma'am mentioned, you're trying to expand the core knowledge of trying to expand the knowledge that all humans have, and you end up becoming so knowledgeable in that one domain, one aspect of things, that you have pretty fancy conversations. You talk about a bunch of things, and what happens when you take on this research lifestyle, as Raksha mentioned, is that your mind starts to behave in a certain way. You start seeing connections where others don't, and that ends up making the world seem a lot interesting than otherwise. So that's how research helped me, and overall, it was such a good experience that I still keep in touch with the professors I had at the university, and even with Raksha ma'am and my colleague there, Jayati, with whom we wrote the paper, and we were still continuing working on our research and trying to extend that into other ways. But here, I'll also talk about why web science, as mentioned, matters to the industry. So right now the US elections are going on and the counting is still going on, and Twitter, Facebook, and all these other social network platforms are overloaded with information about the election, misinformation, true information, and with the advent of technology, AI technologies like GPT from OpenAI and other machine learning algorithms, it has become impossible to understand whether the information being shared is true, or it's some misinformation, or it's a person that's tweeting or posting that information, or is it a bot. And so all of that becomes a huge problem for these companies, and how they handle that, how they set up their algorithms to identify what can be possibly misinformation. All of that that they're able to do because of web science. Web science is broadly the domain of, again, understanding how the web affects us and the variety of tools that you use. You can do all of that. Similarly, at least pretty much everyone right now is on YouTube. That's how I spend most of my day, randomly searching through some YouTube video, and you'll keep getting recommendations of some new video to go next. And oftentimes, YouTube will surprise you with it'll direct you to a video which was 10 years ago, which was posted 10 years ago and had a relatively small number of viewers. But for some reason, it popped up in a recommendation feed. You think about why that happens. It's because the YouTube algorithm is trying to understand how, as a person, you are, and it's trying to feed you more videos of that kind. And so when that happens, the algorithm is tuned to do things in a certain way. There are other people who are posting these videos, who are trying to hijack and get their videos into your feeds. So they'll design their videos in such a manner that they will all show up in your YouTube feeds. Interestingly, think about the ads that Netflix show puts out. Most of Netflix's ads are either designed like a song or like a short film, because those are the kind of items which are most popular in YouTube. They're hardly designed as a trailer, even though they are a movie trailer. Netflix deliberately designs them as such because those are the kind of things YouTube ranks higher in a recommendation list. So if it's a song or if it's a short film-esque video, it has a higher chance of coming up in your feed. So that's how Netflix games the YouTube algorithm. Again, yeah, Netflix. They have such a huge amount of data about how people view movies and how they view these songs, what kind of movies people like, is that they're able to factor in all of that and create more content which keeps people in their service. So if you see right now, if you open up Netflix, you'll see a lot of movies about holidays and Christmas. And these are movies specifically that Netflix creates just for this season of 2 months, just for the November and December season, because this is holidays for pretty much everyone in the world, and it's usually Christmas or people have holidays, and they will make movies just because people spend a lot of time in home and they watch a lot of movies with their family, so they create movies like with things like family and holidays. This is the kind of things that would have never been possible had the web not been there. It's simply impossible to get those kind of details. Another aspect that you might piece of news that you might know is Cambridge Analytica. This was a company that has used Facebook data to create targeted ads for political reasons. So there were these were used by a lot of political parties across the world to target uh, people and try to change their perception of the political party and get them to vote for them. And when this came out, it caused this whole uproar about how why Facebook has so much data and how it is privacy invading, and why it needs to be broken up and all of that. And what Cambridge Analytica at that point was doing was essentially social engineering. They had large amounts of data, and they were using it to influence people, to make people gullible and make certain kind of choices. See, companies like Microsoft partnered up with LinkedIn and GitHub to create this job initiative during this COVID situation. And they used the existing data that they have about people. People would often post about, they're looking for a job, or at least if people start looking for jobs and opportunities on LinkedIn, they're able to tell that, okay, they are looking for more jobs. And then it will recommend upskilling certifications from Microsoft and GitHub. And with that, they promote the businesses of each of these companies, and together help that person as well. Again, classic websites, use of websites. How do you use the data that you have and push people to do certain kinds of choices, make certain kind of choices? Incidentally, this is also something what Google uses for suicidal users. They designed so Google would often they have a special hotline for whenever someone searches for suicidal tendencies on Google, say how to kill yourself or how to commit suicide, or even if it's something not as obvious as such, even things like if you listen to a lot of dark songs on Google, if you have you use certain kind of search terms, Google is able to understand that you might be depressed or you might be having suicidal tendencies, and internally a flag goes on, and your search gets flagged, and you get the sign says, "Do you need help?" And they'll usually have a suicide helpline number that you can call. So, I mean, these are things that the companies are doing with the amount of data that they have, both publicly available and within their own um, silos. And with that, they are able to do a lot of havoc, as Cambridge Analytica did, but also good stuff, like how Google is trying to do for suicidal people, or what Microsoft here is trying to do, helping people get jobs. So The web has given these companies and its people a lot of power, a lot of information on how we as a society are, and hopefully we can use that to be better. And that's it. That's the end of my presentation. So you can always reach out to me on my email or on Twitter. And this is my website if any of you want to visit. Thanks. I'd be happy to take any questions now.
Thank you, Gaurav sir. That was truly enlightening, informative, and constructive. It was a pleasure to hear it from you. Okay, so
Thank you.
we have a lot of questions from our vivid listeners for today's webinar. I hope both Raksha ma'am and Gaurav sir would be enthusiastic to answer all the questions. You all
Surely.
can put your questions in the comment section. Okay. Okay, we will take one question. I would like to ask you, sir. What are the perks which I get as a researcher which I'll not be able to avail while I'm working as a software engineer?
Can you say that again? What are the perks?
What are the perks which I get as a researcher which I'll
Right.
not be able to avail when I'm working as a software engineer?
Well, I guess Raksha would be able to answer that better because I'm still a software engineer, although I am trying to transition into a more research-oriented uh, role, at least within my industry. But yeah, at least how I see it is, as a software engineer, you have to deal with the deadlines and whims of your users, product users. So our at least our product works on a biannual cycle. We have two releases per year, and the last month before that release is so hectic. I usually don't have any weekends for that month. They'll be like working straight for the next 30 days. You typically won't have that if you're a researcher, and the pace of work is relatively streamlined across the year. At least that's how it was for me as a master student. I'm sure it differs for Raksha ma'am and others. So again, it's very difficult to categorize research into silos because you'll have this or you'll have that because it varies a lot across fields, across even people on what kind of research they do. But yeah, you'll have a relatively chill life. And yeah, somebody said 9 to 5 back then. Guys, yeah, that's not happening. It'll happen some days, but other days you'll be actually working say 9 to 9, and even with weekends thrown in. But again, it all depends on what kind of product you're working on and what kind of company you're working for, and how well are you able to push back on the tasks being given to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move forward to the next question.
Yeah. So we have a question, sir. Web progressed from 1 to 1.0 to 3.2 within very short span, but 3.0 has stayed for a long time. Why and when Web 4.0? I
Raksha, do you
think
want to take
Raksha
this?
ma'am, yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Should I repeat the question, ma'am?
So I guess why it is taking time. No, I got the question. Um, so if I understand the question is why is it taking a lot of time to transition from Web 3.0 to 4.0? So this is again my subjective opinion. So I think it is taking time because people are aiming at an intelligent web, and as human beings, we are yet to become intelligent. Yet, I don't think we are as human beings so intelligent as a society. So for the web to become intelligent, I think it will take a lot of time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving ahead. Don't you feel it's clear violation of data when they actually tell it's end-to-end protected yet have access?
Certainly. So again, it what when they say end-to-end protected or end-to-end encrypted, things often vary across services. For example, your WhatsApp messages are end-to-end encrypted. That means whatever message you send to your friend, only you and your friend can see that. But that's just the message. Even if I can, me being if I was working for say WhatsApp, I can get a lot of information in that conversation without having to actually look at what they are talking about. Just by looking at when you were conversing with, say, Prithvi and Preeti were talking about IPL or whether RCB will win this year. Just for the fact that even if I can't see their messages, if they're talking, they're chatting at the during the match time, I can probably deduce that, okay, it's probably something related with the match, or maybe it's one of the topics which is currently trending right now. It might be, say, about the US elections, or it might be about RCB, or it might be about something else altogether. But for a particular person or a particular pair of people, it'll be difficult to quantify. But if you look at the general trend, most you'll be able to give predictions. If say 10,000 people are talking about at a particular piece of time when there is a RCB match going on, you can be sure that 50% of them are actually talking about RCB. Those are the kind of generalizations that you can make without actually having to look into what's being talked about. And these are kind of data points which you can collect for almost anything. So yeah, it's there is a violation of data definitely. I mean, the Facebook, Amazon, Google, they can tell a lot about you without actually having to know what you do, but they know both, and those are one of the few problems that web science has brought with it.
Hmm.
So moving
Okay.
ahead, sir, we got to know about the advantages of web science, but what are the drawbacks or disadvantages of web science?
Okay, so I'm not sure if I just spoke about only the advantages, as in my examples began with how the web is both a positive thing and a negative thing. As such, for the whole domain of web science, like for a let's say at the domain of computer science, right, a domain like that will not have advantages and disadvantages. What you build in that domain might have advantages and disadvantages. Even with web science, probably if you probably build I don't know, you probably tomorrow build a new social media platform, right? You don't have a say in how people use it. Just like any other research product or research artifact that you bring, you don't know how people use it. And that is something that even with web science, you might build it with positive intent, so you don't know how it is going to be used. So that is something that is happening today as well with YouTube and with many social media platforms on Twitter. There's a lot of trolling going on, but people might not have intended that to be happening. So yeah, I would say that is probably the disadvantage of the products that come out of web science, not the domain of web science itself. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question. Which exams to study for if I want to pursue research? Are there any specific exams?
Okay. If you're a bachelor student, like if you're an engineering student, once you finish your engineering, if you want to go to research, then probably GATE will be the best thing to do. Through GATE, you can go to NEMTech or Masters College where you can do do research. So in IIITB, there is, or most of the institution, there is something called as Masters of Science by Research, which is just after engineering. So again, like I said in my presentation, you will have to come up with a research proposal for that as well. So you need, if you want to go to research, you need to identify the area that you're interested in, or the domain that you're interested in, or something that you're curious about. And so you need to present a research proposal. So as long as you have that, I don't think you need any exam separately.
Okay. As the main topic is about web, what is your view on the deep web and the dark web? Because that is the only place where the security is really less and so many people doesn't know about that.
Uh, okay. What is your view? Meaning, does anybody have a positive view about that? I have to go with some negative views. So I'm not sure if that is the only place where security is less. I would say even on the platforms that we use, there are a lot of people who might not reflect on, who might not know the security concerns, privacy concerns. A lot of people are using it without bothering about any of that. Um, I would say just the web as it is today, that itself is dangerous. Let alone the dark web, right? That is even more dangerous, of course. But we are more worried about the web that is accessible to everybody today, and that also has some security concerns.
Okay, okay.
So here I would like to add another point. If sorry,
Yeah.
interrupted. I'd like to add another point. So there are initiatives being taken out by governments to to scan and crawl and assimilate the information on the dark web as well and give them an organized form. An example of this is the MEMEX project, which is being done by NASA. If you look it up, it's memex.jpl.nasa.gov. I can put the link here. It's an initiative by the U.S. government to to use facial recognition and material research and geotagging to identify what kind of people are using the dark web, and then bring them to justice, because a lot of these people are criminals, from human traffickers to drug peddlers and people who deal with drugs and arms and all of that, and they're trying to assimilate that information and you know, trying to do good for the world. So yeah, I mean, it's not that these web science is restricted just to the open web, but also to the dark web. Yeah.
Okay, okay, we'll move ahead. Next question. If you are given a chance to modify or improvise something in the field of research, what would that be? Also, why would that be? And why would you do that?
In research,
Yeah.
I would definitely increase the salaries.
Okay,
I think it is pretty clear why is that.
okay, okay, okay. Now we'll
So
move ahead.
moving ahead, ma'am. So there's another question. Where does research stand in India compared to other countries?
Okay. So I don't think there's a straightforward answer to this. Research in India itself is a very broad, you know, term, very broad area. There are so many domains. There are so many research that is happening. There are so many institutes. I think probably what I can say is some institutes in India, like the main IITs and some of the triple ITs, the research that happens there is pretty good, which is comparable to the some of the international institutes. But then it also depends on the area. Like for example, machine learning or data science. There's a huge traction of research that is going on in India, which is comparable to other countries. But I'm not sure about the other domains, right? I cannot speak in general about research in India, but probably in this domain I can speak.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, we have the next question. Can you please give us an example on what Cogno Web Observatory does?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. So something that we do specifically in Cogno Web Observatory is we look at social media, specifically on Twitter. So what we do is we continue. So it's a ongoing process. Cogno Web Observatory keeps observing the Twitter all the time, and every day what it does is it takes the top 5 trending topics on Twitter and then analyzes the topic. And these are some of the questions that we ask for a given topic. Let's say there is US elections that is going on. Among all the tweets that are there for this topic, what is the dominant story? What are people talking about? So what we call these as narratives, right? These narratives are the stories or worldviews in our head, which is actually driving our thoughts, driving our opinions. Um, so can we, based on the tweets, can we identify what are these stories? Like for example, in we analyzed the topic of Indian elections in 2019, and we found that most of the people were talking about one particular aspect of Indian elections, and there was not many tweets on another political party, for example. So we asked the question of what is the idea or what is the opinion that is dominating on Twitter for this topic. And we also ask the questions like who are the key players in this topic? Like for example, in a topic like this, there are 7 lakh, 8 lakh tweets, right? So in that, can you identify that 4 5 people who are actually playing the key role, who are actually driving whatever is happening around that topic? So we identify those particular players, and we also kind of analyze the health of the discourse. Is this a fair debate that is going on, or is this being hijacked by one particular opinion and things like that? So yeah, these are some of the questions that we ask on Twitter, specifically on Twitter.
Okay. So moving ahead, we have another question,
Okay.
ma'am. What advice would you give to a new researcher?
um, okay. My advice would be speak about your idea. So, whenever you're a new researcher, there is a lot of inhibition into is my opinion correct, or maybe there is a lot of insecurity in saying, "Oh, I have this idea," and presenting that idea is very important. So, I would say speak more. Doesn't matter if it is right or wrong. Doesn't matter if it is a great idea or you think it is not a very great idea. Speak more, tell people what you're thinking. I think that is my advice.
Okay.
Gaurav, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would concur with that. Actually, I would say, yeah, speak more about what you're thinking, and also speak to a lot of people. What happened to me initially was we would typically have these conversations with. I would have my conversations with professor and a couple of people from the lab, but often that ends up being like a bubble where you have a particular notion or particular idea, and you keep getting confirmation that okay, yeah, you're going great, yeah, you're going great, this is the right direction. uh, but that may not be true. This is something that we call a confirmation bias. So something that you can what you can do is talk about your whatever you're working on to a lot of people who have absolutely no idea about your field, and see what they think about it. And when you do that, if you're able to make them understand, then you actually understand your problem well enough. The hardest part about any topic or about your own research is if you don't understand it well enough, you won't be able to make it understand it to someone else. And if you can do it, if you can do that, then you really understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, sir.
Okay, we have the next question. We have heard insufficiency of data is a potential problem for research studies. What is your opinion on this? What do you have to say?
Um, okay. So that is very vague. Insufficiency of data in what? This is like a generic statement. In any research, this is true that you need enough data to to perform research. So that's like agreed in any domain. But I am not very clear. I understood the question.
Okay. We'll
Can
move
I
on.
see the question again?
Yeah.
Insufficiency of data is a potential problem. Um, I I agree with it that it is a problem, but I don't think it is like it is coming up now. This problem has been there since the advent of research, right? Even if we want to, if there is somebody who is researching about sky, right? We want to study about stars and things like that. There is insufficiency of data. We don't have enough data to know more. So that's a problem that has been there from the time when research has started in any domain. So that is a valid problem anywhere in any domain. Yeah.
So, next question. Should I incline more towards engineering or science if I want to become a researcher? Or is it purely based on what topic I wish to research on?
It depends on what you want to do. If you're curious about basic sciences like physics or chemistry, you are curious about things like that. You can go there. If you're curious about so even after you do engineering, you can still go into pure research. You just have to be curious, and you have to put in efforts to understand the domain and then write a research proposal. It depends on what you are inclined to. But I would say explore, like as in go to. So there are a lot of research internships that are available, which are probably 1 month or 2 month internships, where you can actually go and work in the lab, understand how the domain works and things like that. So probably you can have a research internship, one in an engineering background, a lab from that background, or a pure science background, and then probably you will get a better understanding of what you are inclined towards.
So,
So
Gaurav,
here
so your
again,
views on this?
I'd like to add that while at you're in the college, while you're at the university, try and explore as much as you can. These are times where you can, uh, do wildly off-topic things, and nobody would question you. And you can, you might be in computer science, and you can go ahead and take up a research internship with a professor of physics, and they're like, yeah, sure. So these are times when you can, do wildly off-course things, and people will be okay with that. So use that opportunity well and explore, understand what you want, what do you like.
Okay. How many
Um,
topics do you end up researching in the end? Is there like a minimum amount of topics you're expected to research?
Okay, so the in the end, meaning there is technically there's no end to research, but I am assuming when you say end, that might be probably end of my PhD journey. I am assuming that is the question. So in for a PhD specifically, there are some milestones that you have to finish, and there are some requirements, some amount of publications that you have to have, minimum number of publications that you have to have to complete your PhD. Typically, it is at least three to four research problems that you work on, and these are not random research problems, right? There is some common thread through to all of these research questions. Like for example, if my research is focused on social media, and we specifically look at social cognition, that is my theme. So based on that theme, I worked on 3 different research problems before I completed my PhD. So before I said, this is enough for a PhD, at least 3 to 4 research problems is what you work on. And probably one each research question for a complete life cycle for a research question to complete, probably it might take around 1 to 1.5 years of your time. That might be typically 3 semesters. Um, if that's what you're asking, yeah.
So next question is, how do you formulate research questions and choose a topic for research?
Um, okay, again, there is so I was talking about the research methodology, right? Once you go into a PhD or into a research, so for me, how it happened is for the first 1 year completely, I took all courses that contribute to this domain of web science. I took many courses, and when I started, understanding the domain, I looked at what are the open problems of the domain. Like for example, in web science, there are multiple open problems today, right? So I looked at, so you typically do that. You first understand domain, and you look for what are the open problems today in that domain, and then you pick the one that you are interested in. So I would say at least first year of your research, 1 year of your research will go into formulating the research problem.
I have a question, ma'am, from my side.
Sure.
So, how does working in a startup company which is based on your interest or doing internships in the same field help us to get into the field of research?
Um, Again, it gives you more exposure, right? So basically when you're going into research, the more and more you understand about the domain, the more and more you have clarity about the question that you want to work on, it is better. So the experience that you get with the startup where you work is going to help you in all phases of research, for even formulating the question. When you're formulating the question, if you have the practical knowledge of how can you implement this, it gives you a better decision making capacity. Like you can decide if this is implementable or not. That is a very critical skill. Like people come up with random questions which might not even be possible programmatically, right? If you have an exposure in a startup or in industry, you would know if this question is feasible or not, or if it is even possible to address this or not. So I would say it will help you more in decision making process.
Uh, Thank you, ma'am. Gaurav sir, your views on this?
Um, Certainly, I think I agree with Raksha ma'am's views here. If when you work in the industry, when you work as an engineer, or at least in a startup, startups are characterized by their incredibly fast speed, and every day you break something, you make something new, and you're testing your whatever assumptions and decisions that you have in reality. So that gives you a lot of flexibility on how to deal with things, and gives you that ability to think on your feet. Things are changing very rapidly, and that gives you, as ma'am mentioned, the ability to understand and look at a solution and then say whether this is feasible, whether this is technically feasible or not. And that is something a lot of people lack, and it's something that is highly desirable. So if you have that, it helps a lot both as an engineer and as a researcher, because then it helps you eliminate possibilities straight away. This is not possible, so you don't even waste your time thinking about it. Move on.
Okay. I would like to ask one more question.
Sure.
Describe your teaching experience. Like, how do you feel about teaching? What is your teaching philosophy?
Oh, this is entirely for Raksha ma'am.
Yeah. Okay.
um, okay. Probably, I would not answer that as a teacher. I want to answer that as a student, listening to professors from multiple phases of my life. Right, I have heard professors at my engineering college. I have heard professor teaching at my masters, and now I'm hearing to professors at triple ITB. I think one big difference that I see in the faculty of triple ITB is even while teaching, let's say for database management systems, they make you think about what is that field. You get an idea of why something is developed. Like for example, when I studied database, I am just randomly taking an example. When I studied database systems, I had no idea where I am going to use what I studied in my engineering. But when I listened to the same course at triple ITB, it is so clear to me where in my life I'm going to use certain skills, or why is it that it has to come this way, or why is it that a database system is designed like this. I think a teaching experience is where you if you can convey to the students why you are teaching what you are teaching. I think the purpose of teaching is fulfilled. That is purely my opinion. um, yeah, that's what I would say.
Next question. It's for Gaurav, sir. So can you share your story of PDF viewer?
Interestingly, PDF here also originated from the project that I was working on with Professor Srinath. Uh, so as I mentioned, we built a social network for researchers where you can post uh, you can post basically anything. You can post class slides or research papers or presentations that you've made for your project and anything, and others can just view that. And it was initially designed as a internal knowledge repository for our institute. And so one of the problems that I faced along the way was that we wanted to lock down uh, the way PDFs were viewed. So you should be able to see the PDF only in the browser, and you should not be able to download it and take it away or make screenshots or copy paste and all of that. We wanted to do that because we wanted to keep it a closed system, and that was essential for our use case there. So uh, I looked at a lot of open source libraries and what I can use, and none actually had all the features that I needed. So I ended up forking this is an existing project called View PDF on GitHub, and I ended up forking that and rewriting it from scratch for my use case. And when I was done, I was like, yeah, if it's useful for me, I think other people might also have a problem with the same library. So I open sourced it. And yeah, in the last I think last year, it has grown tremendously. We have close to 300 people 300 projects which are actively using PDF here. Most of them are uh, personal projects of others, but yeah, incidentally, because of PDF viewer, I also got offered a couple of freelance positions across multiple startups, just so that I can help them integrate PDF viewer. And another thing that happened was one of my juniors, he works for a law firm. It's a law tech company. It's a startup. It's called Clarity Law. Uh, and uh, they are using PDF viewer to power their the interface, which is being used by I think 20 of Forbes 500 customers, Forbes 500 companies. So that was a good achievement. I would say that big companies are using your product, and while I get paid nothing, but it feels good. So there was that.
Okay. We are done with the questions for today. For further queries, please contact Gaurav sir and Raksha ma'am through social media handles. The contact details are presented on the screen. You can view them. Okay. To connect more with us, you can join our DSC JSSSTU community and our community server on Discord. You can also follow us on Instagram for further updates. All the links are provided in the description. Finally, we, the team of DSC JSSSTU, would like to express our sincere thanks and gratitude to Ms. Raksha, Mr. Gaurav, and Pushpalata ma'am for giving us excellent coverage to various subject matters. Uh, Also, huge thanks to Professor Srinivas sir from IIT Bangalore for amazing support and making this event possible. I would like to thank our media partner, Mysuru Memes, for being a great support in promoting our event. Finally, and most importantly, I would like to thank all the viewers for their involvement and their willingness to take part in this event. Thank you all for joining us today. We hope to meet you all in the further sessions. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. I really enjoyed the session. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, guys. Thanks for this opportunity. Really humbled to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.